Jo Pearson joins us from Michael's with another great technique. You're doing something with candles. What is this?
It's an awesome technique on the candles, and it's really kind of magic. So I can't wait to show you. We're just taking an ordinary candle. Doesn't have to be a very expensive candle. So we just have, and you can use a solid color, which is going to work best. And then we're going to take tissue paper. And I've cut it about the width of the candle. And then I just picked out a stamp. Now you can use any kind of rubber stamp that you want. This one happens to be the music notes. And we are going to stamp on the tissue paper. I'm hoping that my ink is really nice and it looks nice and moist there.
It's really good, Jo.
So I'm going to take and I'm just going to lay it on the tissue paper.
And press down
all
over.
And some of this we're going to cover up. So, you just want to make sure you've got your ink on here good. And it doesn't matter if it overlaps. So we're going to take and stamp our entire piece.
And of course you measured around the diameter of the candle first.
And it's going to overlap a little bit. So now what we want to do though is we want to set this aside. I'm going to give you that. We want to set this aside because we want this ink to dry really well before we go to our next step. So I'm going to give you that. Here we have a piece that we already have stamped. Now here's where the magic comes in. I'm going to take my candle and I'm just going to lay it down with the tissue paper and I'm going to start it. I found out this was the easiest way to do it. Now I'm just using a heat gun. Okay, it's going to be a little bit noisy. So we're going to turn this on. Okay.
Oh, that's not too bad.
No, it's not, is it? And we are going to hold it. And what's going to happen is the actual wax from the candle is going to start coming through, and you can see this happening. It's going to start coming through the tissue paper.
And it's actually going to
and look, it's melting. See what it's doing?
That is so cool.
So we're just going to kind of leave it and go a little bit at a time and go up and down. And we're going to completely melt that on. Now what I'd like to do is I kind of like to go back and just kind of smooth it out a little bit. What's good about rolling it is then you can keep it tighter. The first time I tried it, I had it standing up, and what happens is then the tissue got a little crinkled, and I didn't care.
That one would have been a nice effect, though, too.
It is. So you can see. I mean, here's just still a little bit of that. You see how the wax is melting. But you could do this with just any kind of, and of course a colored candle. You could use that too, but it's nice when you use them this way. So we're just going to kind of keep going around.
Of course, it's colored tissue too, or tissue with sparkle in it, just all kinds.
I'm going to show you when we're done with this one, because actually, if you don't want to go to as much trouble as stamping it, so see when we get down here at the end, we want to kind of smooth it and hold it a little bit as we go along.
That is so. I would have been looking for a glue, Jo. I have to tell. I have to tell you. But now when you've done this, now this is tissue paper. So the candles are for decorative purposes only, I would think. Or?
Yes. So I want to show you this now. So you can see, and there's a couple little creases, but what's happened, it's where the wax is kind of melted a little unevenly. But look how cool that looks.
That is gorgeous. Now, it really, really is.
If you wanted to, you could go back and antique it or whatever, but we're just going to add some more decorative paper. So I've just taken a pretty piece of scrapbook paper and I put some tape on one end. And what we're going to do is you can add ribbon or whatever. So we're just going to wrap this around our candle. See if I've got it here in the center. We'll put that on. Okay. And then we're just going to take a pretty piece of ribbon. Now, one of the things I want to show you too here that we have, there are just such beautiful pieces of jewelry that you can get today. And what's fun is maybe you want to even think about using one of your grandma's brooches or something like that.
I was just going to say they look like something my grandmother used to wear, but we can also, we can even get things like this from the store, right? If you don't have to have
that's what all of this is, So we're just going to kind of tie a piece of ribbon around here, and you can attach it if you wanted to. You could take it and put it on with a piece of glue too, because I'm just going to trim this off in the back. But I want to show you some of the pieces of jewelry when you get them. They have different places where they're pins and they're this, but you can just take a wire cutter and always make sure that when you're cutting the backs off of something, that you hold your hand over it.
Over this so it doesn't fly.
I fling stuff across. I'll be doing something at home and I'll hear something ping somewhere. And it's like, I've just shoved that all the way across the room. So that, plus you don't want to get hit in the eye.
That's true.
You want to just take
We always have
off.
to be careful when we're crafting,
absolutely. Right? You got to have industrial strength things sometimes. So I've taken all the pieces off. But then look, we have just some pretty pearl-headed pins. And because this already has pearls in it, look what we're going to do. We're just going to take... And let me shove it through this way. We're going to put it this way. And then we're just going to take the pin and we're going to push it through.
And it goes right into the candle.
The candle. And look, you just got, and you take another one, then put it at the bottom, and look what a beautiful
It's
finished
gorgeous.
piece that you
What
have.
a great gift.
And you know what this would cost if you went to buy it at the store.
Yeah.
You know, and you've made it for a fraction of the cost. But look at one of our other little tricks. This is another candle that we did, but if you don't want to go into the trouble of actually, you know, printing on the tissue paper,
Right.
this is just a print tissue paper that we put on the same way, and then just put some pretty ribbon around it. And these are just brads that we stuck into the candle.
That is cool.
So, isn't that beautiful?
But you know what's really cool? I love your candle holder for this candle here. It's an upturned wine glass.
Absolutely. You don't have to go out and buy a really
That is the
expensive
coolest.
candle
You have
holder.
the coolest ideas, Jill. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.